Hello and welcome back, everyone. It's just another day in the life as a military wife, and with the holiday seasons fast approaching, most people are gearing up to spend time with their family and friends. But as part of the military community, we know that not every service member is going to be home for the holidays. In this week's episode, we're going to be discussing some of the situations that will be keeping our service members away from their homes and what is going on with other aspects of the military community. I am your host, Sam Wolf, and as always, you're listening to Life of a Military Wife. Okay, just as kind of a housekeeping thing, this week's episode is going to contain some information regarding soldiers or service members who have been injured and or killed. And I'm just giving you a heads up, there will not be any graphic details, but just as a warning. Additionally, some of the situations that we are discussing for operational security, there is not full disclosure on them. So I will give you the information I have, but again, I don't have access to everything. And even if I did, I wouldn't and couldn't share it. So that said, I want to move into the first bit of business I want to talk about, and that is the two Navy SEALs who were killed the confrontation with the Houthi pirates earlier this year. A report has finally been published in regards to what caused their deaths and the circumstances around it. They were there to help protect U.S. shipping in the region because of the increased rates of piracy that are still going on and have not been yet checked. The Houthi pirates have gone so far as to actually shoot at U.S. Navy vessels as well as cargo ships. And these SEALs were responding to those threats and in the process drowned. The report is highly redacted, so it's not a complete picture by any means. But if you are interested in finding out more about what happened, the report has been finally released. The next thing that I wanted to share was that three more of the service members who were injured in the attack on the Jordan military installation we have. So the United States has service members that were stationed in Jordan, and back on January 28th of this year, they received a missile attack by surrogates of Iran or Iran proxies. 3 Army reservists were killed in that attack, and 41 guardsmen were injured. Of the 41 guardsmen who were injured, 38 have now received the Purple Heart. The 3 most recent recipients were earlier this month. They said in a interview that they were hit by the missile and knocked unconscious. When they came to, they began to search all the people in that area around, knocking on doors, trying to find everyone and get everyone into the bunker so that they would be safe and so that they could receive the medical attention that they needed. Again, this is just a tragedy that we have lost those reservists. But it is good that the service members who were injured are getting the recognition. These medals, most people don't understand, but when you get a Purple Heart, especially in a situation like this, that then enables your family and your children to receive extra assistance, scholarships, and aid that they might need in the future. So the recognition is important considering the fact that they did receive those injuries. Going on further to back to hurricane-ness, because wow, natural disasters have really done a doozy. Milton went through Florida, and thank goodness Hurricane Milton was not as devastating as it had been predicted that it would be. However, in preparation for the hurricane and out of an abundance of caution, MacDill Air Force Base was evacuated near Tampa, and as a result, people were protected because there was damage done to the base. Evidently, the base was hit by 90-mile-an-hour winds. There are trees down, some of the roads are impassable, and there is flooding in low-lying areas. Evidently, none of the main base structures have been affected by flooding, thank goodness. But again, residents and service members are not going to be permitted back in until it has been fixed and repaired. There are typically over 5,250 service members and 1,350 civilian personnel, as well as family members who live on the base. And they are still currently evacuated and in limbo until the slightly under 200-person crew can help get this taken care of. They are working out of an emergency response station as of right now, and hopefully these families will be able to return to their homes soon. But we'll just have to wait and see where we're at with that one. Then heading back on to the Hurricane Helene efforts, the military has been actively involved with helping with the response in all of the majorly affected states, Georgia, North Carolina, and Tennessee. And I specifically wanted to highlight the work of the Army Engineering Corps as well as just a few other units that have been involved. Now, when I was discussing this with my husband, I found out something I had not been particularly aware of previously. But he pointed it out to me. Most of the members of the Army Engineering Corps are actually civilians. In fact, 37,000 of them are civilian employees. They include engineers, scientists, architects, and project managers. There are active duty military, of course, who participate in the Army Corps of Engineers, as well as reservists and National Guard members. And we're going to be addressing some of the things that they're doing in the different areas that they are helping with. But I thought that was interesting to know that as we talk about the work they're doing, not all of these are service members. Some of these are civilians who are away from their families and sacrificing because this means something to them and they want to help the fellow citizens of their country who are struggling and suffering at this time. In regards to that, we'll start with the Tennessee National Guard Army Corps of Engineers. They are currently helping out in Cocke County. They are clearing debris from underneath the bridge there. Specifically, it is the Pigeon River. On the Pigeon River, it is the Hartford Bridge. And they're helping out with debris removal in the area and helping with the structures in that area. Furthermore, the Army Corps of Engineers is also involved in Swannanoa, North Carolina. And please forgive me if I pronounce names wrong. I am doing my best. But the group in Swannanoa are focused on four major projects. The first one they are getting these mission assignments, these objectives from FEMA. Their first objective that they have been working on is temporary emergency power. And in the last little bit since they got there, they have installed over 17 temporary power generators to help facilitate hospitals and other crucial infrastructure that need that power right away. Of course, there's still the linemen who are trying to help get the actual power permanently restored to those areas, and we are grateful for their work. But in addition to that, the Army Corps of Engineers is also involved with debris removal. And if you've seen any of these pictures, you know that there is tons of debris that is going to have to be removed and dealt with, as well as mud and other things. So that is not a small job for them by any measure. The other thing that they are working on is temporary. They have a temporary water team who is installing temporary water purification units that use reverse osmosis. And that's because it ties right into the next project that they are working on, which is their infrastructure team is helping to assess and repair wastewater systems. Their reclamation centers in some of these areas were completely damaged, and therefore they do not have any form of water purification. And so, to have clean water, they need these different pumps and purification units going. The group that is assessing those waste management systems is being partnered with the EPA. The EPA is helping them out with those assessments. That team of Army Corps engineers that are working out of Swannanoa, and I hope I'm saying that right, North Carolina, total about uh, 250, maybe a little bit more. So they are going to be there probably for the long haul to get these things done, which means there's a good chance that they will be missing out on at least some of the holidays with their families. And so that's a sacrifice that they make as service members, and they want to be able to help and serve their communities, especially in times of need like this. The other group that I would like to highlight is the 101st Airborne. So the 101st Airborne have been stationed, some of them have been in the Asheville area of North Carolina, and they were working out of that area in general when they were told by first responders about all of the damage that had happened up at Chimney Rock. And if you've been following the coverage, it has been reported multiple times in lots of different sources. The devastation that was hit by the Chimney Rock community, the river actually changed the course of its flow and ripped out whole sections of the historic downtown, as well as a mini golf and lots of other areas. And it has just been absolutely devastating for the community as a whole. And when the first responders conveyed this information to the 101st Airborne, they immediately sent a drone to do reconnaissance up in that area to determine the extent of the damage and what assistance they could possibly provide. When they realized the extent of the damage and what was needed, they immediately sent a platoon out there to start assisting with mucking out, or basically just getting all of the mud out of the shops in that area, as well as assisting the community in general. And there is a possibility, and most likely, they will be sending more soldiers up there in the future. But there's just a ton of mud to be shoveled out of these buildings, because the buildings that are still standing, they they're just full of water and mildew and stuff. And so there's people who did not lose their homes being swept away by the water that will end up losing good chunks of their homes, or a good chunk of what was in their homes or businesses, due to the mud, the moisture, the mold, and other things. And so the work of reclaiming these communities is going to take quite a bit of time and not be very quick at all. The other military unit that I wanted to talk about, and this one really touched my heart. It was the 82nd Airborne, and there was a very, very heartwarming video of them helping provide warm meals for the community of Green Mountain, North Carolina. And it was just a very sweet video to see these kids, just and elderly people, just families in general, receiving a hot meal, and the work that these service members are doing so far away from their families to help provide for these communities in any way that they can. And this is why we serve. We love our country. We love our fellow citizens. And so these sacrifices are worth it for us, because it's how we show that love. And you could just see it in this video. It was some of the videos that I've been able to get that illustrate firsthand the work that is being done by these service members has been produced by a wonderful veteran organization that have a YouTube channel and a great media presence. They do great video recordings of and spotlights on military. The military community in general, as well as different military projects, assignments, and organizations. I will put a reference to them in the description below so that you can look them up if you are interested. But it got me all thinking. This whole situation got me thinking, especially an interview with the coroner from one of these counties, because he is a veteran, and he was talking about the impact to his community and why he had served, and what they were needing. And it just highlighted that not only do we have military families that have been affected and are out of their homes, but we also have a huge amount of the veteran community that has been impacted by this situation as well. And last week, I highlighted the fact that a huge number of these volunteers that were able to get on site the quickest and just get to work were veterans. But not only that, there are a significant number of veterans in these communities that have been impacted directly themselves. And through the process of doing the interviews for my veteran series the next month, it was brought up that oftentimes as veterans, you don't have the same network and support system as you do in the active duty service. When we're in the active duty service, we've got units, we've got family readiness groups, we've got all sorts of different components to assist us with hard times and struggles, and not to mention the nonprofit organizations and the chaplains associations that often step in and provide aid when needed. But when you get out of the military, it's a completely different story. You have to find a lot of these networks and support systems on your own. And that can be a struggle at the best of times for veterans who have things that they deal with, like PTSD and depression and injuries and medical problems. But when a natural disaster strikes, those problems and difficulties that they are struggling with already can be compounded. And going into the winter, it's starting to get cold now. The holidays are hitting. There are going to be a lot of these veterans from these communities that have been adversely affected and may not have what they need, let alone what they would like to have for the holidays. They may not have a home anymore. And so I wanted to talk about the VFW and the point out that there are other organizations that are specifically assisting veterans who get impacted by disasters. And the VFW does have a disaster relief fund for veterans. You may not be familiar with the VFW, that stands for Veterans of Foreign Wars, but they are an amazing organization that reaches out and helps veterans build a sense of community. Specifically, they focus on veterans that served in foreign wars, hence the name. But I will be linking the donation page for the VFW for their disaster relief assistance for veterans in the description for this podcast episode. But I wanted to just take a moment to point out that there is a lot of work that's going to have to be done in these areas to recover. And this recovery is not going to be a quick process. In many cases, these families are going to be struggling without everything they need in the middle of winter, and it can get awfully cold in these areas. So please do what you can. There's so many people who've done so much as it is, but at least keep them in your prayers if there's nothing else. And that just really, really meant a lot to me. But it also, this whole situation brought another thing to mind. Long before we became a military family, I became familiar with the song Citizen Soldier from Three Doors Down. And in that song, the lyrics just have always been very powerful to me. And I wanted to share them with you. So it says that on that day when you need your brothers and your sisters to care, I'll be there. Citizen soldiers holding the light for the ones we guide from the dark of despair, standing on guard for the ones that we sheltered. We'll always be ready because we will always be there. And it's not just active duty soldiers, there's quite a bit of the guard there as well. And that really is why we serve. We want to be there. We want to be helpful. And you are our brothers and sisters, and we care about you. And when I say that, I mean the military in general. Oftentimes, I wonder if the wider population of the United States, the average civilians, really understand that so much of what the military does is out of love. Not everyone and not everything. I'm not going to speak for everyone, but I know quite a few who would characterize their actions and why they serve in that way. So I want that message of love to please go out to all of those who are struggling, recovering from these hurricanes, whether they are military, whether they are not, that there is love and you are loved. That said, there has been a whole lot going on with the podcast, and I have launched a few different things. Please check the description of this episode if you want to be apprised to them. But specifically, I have a research poll that I am doing for parents. You don't have to be military, but if you have a kid under 18 or you know someone who has a kid under 18, it'll take about a minute. It is 4 questions only, but it's just asking how they make decisions on what media they feel is appropriate for their kids. I'm trying to just gather some information, and it is for a project that I hope to have out before the end of the year, but if not, at the beginning of next year. With all of that said, and all that I have covered, please, let's do our best to be the good that we want to see in the world. And as always, I am your host, Sam Wolf, and you have been listening to Life of a Military Wife.